very pleased to welcome to the digital stage Lord Jitesh Gadhia, a member of the House of Lords, also known as Baron Gadhia of Northwood. Lord Gadhia is one of the key figures who has helped to strengthen UK-India relations and has been associated with some of the largest investments between the United Kingdom and India. Over to you now, Lord Gadhia.
Thank you, Eddie. Good afternoon and welcome to this special session marking the second annual India Day in the UK Parliament. It was my privilege to host the inaugural UK India Week lunch in the House of Lords last year, and it was very much our intention to make this a regular fixture in the parliamentary calendar, celebrating the important relationship between our two countries. This year, I'm delighted to see this event go both global and virtual, perhaps a small silver lining to the current pandemic, allowing us to include over 10,000 participants from more than 69 countries around the world, and covering every aspect of our partnership with India. As we just heard from Tim Jones of Tata in his video clip, the lunch itself has taken on a new form and meaning, with the provision of more than 2,000 free meals for those less fortunate across India and the UK. And I would like to thank Tata for their generosity in supporting such a worthy cause, and also appreciate the support of our charity partners, Taj Public Service Welfare Trust and Sevade. Alongside me at this virtual lunch, I'm delighted to welcome some old and new friends, my colleague, Lord Tariq Ahmed, who is Minister of State responsible for South Asia, the Commonwealth, and the United Nations. Also, Her Excellency Gayatri Kumar, who has just started as the new High Commissioner of India to the United Kingdom, and Amit Kapoor, Head of Tata Consultancy Services in the UK and Ireland. Before exploring how we can further deepen the strategic partnership between UK and India and take our collaboration to the next level, I'm delighted to start this session with a special message from the first Secretary of State and Secretary of State for Foreign and Commonwealth Affairs, the Right Honourable Dominic Raab, MP.
Hello, and thank you for having me as part of India Global Week. COVID-19 is a global challenge, and the UK has been proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with India in our international response. As we've responded to this crisis, we've been privileged to have 25,000 Indian professionals working in our brilliant NHS service here at home. We hugely value their contribution. And with India's help, we were able to obtain vital supplies of paracetamol at the very height of the crisis, which has been critical in the fight against COVID-19. Over recent months, we've brought home British nationals from India. We've worked closely with the government of India to get Indian nationals back home safe and sound. And throughout the crisis, we've worked together. So I want to thank the Government of India and my colleague and friend, Dr. Jaishankar, for their invaluable assistance in this extraordinary effort. As leaders in the international response, the UK and India have also co-authored the G20 Action Plan, providing an immediate package of $200 billion of global support for the most vulnerable countries right around the world. Even before COVID struck, Britain was India's second biggest research partner, with our joint research estimated to be worth £400 million by 2021. And with India's contribution to the recent Gavi summit on vaccines, together we smashed the target for funding with $8.8 billion raised. But we've got the potential to do even more. A vaccine created by British scientists and manufactured in India, if successful in clinical trials, would have the potential to reach 1 billion people across the developing world, thanks to Oxford University and India's Serum Institute. That would be an amazing achievement, benefiting not just British and Indian people, but making it accessible for the most vulnerable people right around the world. So working together, we can make it happen. Beyond the immediate challenge of COVID, the friendship between Britain and India is strong. We want to take it to the next level. Our trade relationship is growing, bolstered by entrepreneurs, business founders, and innovators. It increased by nearly 10% to over £24 billion in 2019. We issue more skilled work visas to India than the rest of the world combined. And the number of Indian students in the UK has tripled in the last 3 years alone. Bound by our shared aspirations and ambitions, Britain and India will be energetic champions of free trade to boost small businesses, to cut the cost of living for consumers and to create the jobs of the future. And we also believe that our friendship with India will be crucial as the UK fulfills its ambition to be an even stronger force for good in the world. When the UK hosts COP26 in 2021, we'll be key partners in tackling climate change. As India returns to the UN Security Council next year and takes up the G20 presidency, I look forward to deepening our cooperation on international issues right across the board. Bound by the depth of our friendship, we will look to India as key partners, not only in our response to this current crisis, but as we build back better and stronger than ever before. Britain will continue to be a part of India's success story, and I know India will continue to be a part of ours. Thank you.
I'm very grateful to Dominic for that thoughtful message, highlighting the many dimensions of our collaboration across pharmaceuticals, vaccines, research, trade, students, climate change, multilateral forums and more, especially his concluding comments about sharing in each other's success. As you also heard, during this COVID crisis, the Foreign Secretary has maintained a close dialogue with his counterpart, Dr. Juncture, who will be addressing this conference tomorrow afternoon. And indeed, our Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has similarly maintained regular contact with Prime Minister Modi throughout this period. The adversity of the pandemic has brought our two countries closer together, and that same spirit is important as we emerge into the next phase of living with COVID whilst fostering a strong recovery and revival. With that backdrop, if I could turn first to my colleague Tariq Ahmed. Yesterday, Prime Minister Modi inaugurated India Global Week with a series of remarks about India's ambition and world outlook. There was one comment which struck me as being very significant, namely his clarification about India's openness to foreign trade and investment. He said that Atma Nirbhar Bharat, or self-reliant India, and I quote, is not about being self-contained or being closed to the world. It is about being self-sustaining and self-generating. I thought that was an important distinction and one that very much chimes with the UK government's approach to global Britain. And so I would like to ask you, Tariq, how aligned is the agenda of the UK and India at this critical juncture in world history?
Well, Jitesh, thank you very much, and good afternoon, and namaste to all of you across the globe who are joining us for this extremely important event. And I'm delighted to be part and parcel and play a role in the discussions we're having. But you're right, Jitesh. I think the element of what we've heard from India, from Prime Minister Modi, and what we've heard from Prime Minister Johnson is about looking at undoubtedly what our countries need, but also recognizing the importance of the interdependency of humanity as we find common cause, both in facing up to the current pandemic, but also looking beyond the pandemic. As Dominic just said in his response, we are working hand in glove. We want to strengthen our partnerships in a raft of areas, and the challenges of climate change provide a huge opportunity. When you look at India's leadership on solar, you look at our own leadership here in the UK on offshore wind, well, it's time to bring the sun and wind together, and let's do something together for the benefit of all. But it can't be without doubt, and it would be remiss of me not to first of all reflect on both the sadness and the tragedy that has unfolded on all of us through the pandemic, which is COVID-19. We ourselves in the United Kingdom have been extremely challenged by what we have suddenly found ourselves caught up with. Just before we came on air, you and I, Jitesh, were working and on a lighter note talking about the exchanges of parenthood in virtual schooling, and we now have a greater appreciation perhaps for teaching and teachers themselves. But in all seriousness, as I was going as the minister responsible, and I'm proud and both honoured to be holding that position of strengthening our relation with India, the challenge we faced in repatriating British nationals from India. And I want to contextualize that, again, using the words of Prime Minister Modi, when he talked of the living bridge between the United Kingdom and India. That's what the living bridge is. It was that people-to-people link. And yes, whilst they were Brits that we were bringing back home, they were Brits like you and I, who have a rich heritage in India. You know, Prime Minister Modi's often, and I've joked about this before, talked about made in India. You know, descending from a mother born in Jodhpur and a father born in Gurdaspur, I always say I've got a bit of made in India in me. But that link of people to people was what really brought us together. As we brought people back, I pay tribute to, yes, Jaishankar ji for his excellent role, his team, Minister Muralidharan particularly, but also the different chief ministers in places such as the Punjab, places such as near Ahmedabad. When we were talking in Gujarat, we were talking about the importance of local administrations. Had we not had that level of cooperation over what was a very challenging situation for India domestically, we would not have had the success in returning so quickly. And we're not talking small numbers. 17,000 people came back. That was constituting over close to 60% of all the Brits we repatriated from around the world. And therefore, it was right that we then stood with India when India sought to repatriate Indian nationals, not just from the UK, but elsewhere in Europe, to help to facilitate that return. And I pay tribute to the efforts of the Indian administration in their Vande Bharat flights, which not only provided Indians returning home, it also allowed us to deliver our new High Commissioner to India as well. And we developed, as we welcome Gayatri ji here, it's a pleasure seeing her again, albeit virtually. We were also delighted that Philip Barton was able to take up his new role in Delhi. And we look forward to the important work being outlined already across the economy, across trade, and on working on the COVID crisis. And if I may just pause on that particular point, and Dominic again referred to the importance of COVID-19. I was really quite privileged to help to facilitate that initial dialogue between other Poonawalla of the Serum Institute and AstraZeneca, and through our Department of Health, and Matt was directly involved with that as well. And that showed that how government and the private sector need to come together, work together to find a solution to this global pandemic. And I do hope that that will show that we stand together, not just in the interests of our own people and citizens, but as Prime Minister Johnson and Modi have said, it's through working together on this global pandemic and finding a vaccine solution that through the Serum Institute, and I know I speak for everyone, we wish everyone success, that we'll be able to provide support, not just for our own citizens, but for many vulnerable people all around the world. So we look forward to a further strengthening partnership with India. There are many people who have a rich heritage with India who today represent the United Kingdom. And I think that lays itself to a very strong and prosperous future, not just for both nations, but as we take our role on the world stage. And may I add formally, again, the welcome of India to the UN Security Council, and as Minister for both the UN and Commonwealth, we look forward to working with India, not just bilaterally, but through multilateral fora as well. Thanks, Jitesh.
Thanks, Tariq. If I could bring in the High Commissioner into the discussion, firstly to add my own official public welcome to the UK. Last year I co-hosted the India Day lunch in Parliament with your predecessor, Ruchi Ghanshyam, and we remember her with much affection and fondness, and it's wonderful to have another very senior female diplomat from India. As you familiarize yourself and get your feet under the table here, what is topmost in your inbox, and what are your priorities in the coming months? I think you're on mute, High Commissioner.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Lord Gadia. First of all, Honourable Minister of State, Lord Tariq Ahmed, thank you very much for your comments. I would fully, reciprocate the warm sentiment, and also fully agree with each and every point that you made. I'm very grateful for the contribution of yourself, Lord Gadia. The fact that today would have been an annual India Day, I think would have been a moment of great pride for me. But I'm also very proud of the alternative program that was quickly thought of, the 2,000 people being fed in India. I think that was a very noble initiative, and thank you for all these wonderful initiatives. The theme of Be the Revival, partners, a winning partnership, reminds me of Mahatma Gandhi's, his motto that we should be the change that we want to see. Somehow that comes to my mind. I'm glad you mentioned the clarification of Honorable Prime Minister on Atmanirbharta, Atmanirbhar Bharat, because this is supposed to actually merge into the global supply chain, into global cooperation for economic reform and recovery and revival. So I am very glad you mentioned that. I also would like to convey on this platform India's thanks for the terrific partnership in which we were able to repatriate 21,000. Some of them were Indian nationals, some British friends, and also Indian nationals from outside the UK. This is the perfect timing for this kind of a discussion, I feel, and thank you for asking me this question. I feel that this is a time that all nations all over the world are actually individually and in groups and collectively reviewing their and rebooting their priorities. This has been a kind of a black swan event, and which has seen also coincided with global geopolitics seeing a sudden transformation. There have been a new set of post-COVID compulsions. We also see in Europe on the economic front that there has been an impulse for reshoring after offshoring manufacture. So that throws up, challenges as well as opportunities. But at the global level, of course, and I would like to mention Brexit, the fact that now the UK would be taking independent, having an independent trade policy is another area which I would call an opportunity. And the fact that we've done a joint trade review and even identified the 5 areas where we would like to push ahead or prioritize, I think that's a great start. I had the opportunity on another panel of, hearing the Honorable Madam Secretary of State for Trade. So her remarks were extremely encouraging, as were the remarks of the Right Honorable Foreign Secretary, the Honorable Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab just now. He and his Indian counterpart, the fact that our 2 prime ministers are speaking and identifying the priorities of India-UK agenda going forward, these are very, very good guidelines for an incoming High Commissioner like me. If I may, I would just like to also say that the fact that India is now in the UNSC and India will be working closely with the UK on some of the very, very important global issues. And this brings up, some of the issues on which we have convergence, which will have great importance now because of the emerging, we would be an important voice for the developing world as well. But there are issues like terrorism, security in the world. Climate change is another issue where the UK would find in its presidency of COP26 that India would be a great partner and a great support. We are taking initiatives in solar, usage of renewable energy. Prime Minister has today inaugurated a 750 kilowatt solar project in Madhya Pradesh, which will help to feed the Delhi Metro. I also would like to mention that India would be working with all the G20 countries December 1 this year. We will be part of the Troika, although our presidency comes up later. So this again throws up an opportunity for India and the UK to be at the helm of making it a better world, working together on all these issues. Of course, the most important thing that would be a priority for us is supporting other member states who feel the need, like we do, of safeguarding and preserving multilateralism and reform of international organizations to make them more effective, for a rules-based international order, for rules-based international trade with WTO at its center. Now, these are all points which are, very, very, they are highest on our country's agenda. They would be highest on my checklist. And I am already working with, my counterparts in the Foreign and Commonwealth Office who have been most enthusiastic when I've mentioned these priorities. So really, I couldn't ask for more. Thank you.
Thank you, High Commissioner. I hear a very close alignment there. And on that note, maybe I should turn to Amit. You've just heard the exciting ambition from a government to government perspective. So let's explore how that translates into the business world. You represent one of India's largest listed companies by market value, and we heard from Prime Minister Modi yesterday the importance of Indian talent, especially in the technology sector. Your business model is driven by providing solutions using technology talent. What more can UK and Indian governments do to harness this capability?
Sure. Many thanks, Lord Gadia. First and foremost, it's a privilege to join yourself, Lord Ahmed, and Her Excellency, the Ambassador, on this in this conversation. If I may, just paint a impression of the relationship that we have enjoyed between UK and India on the back of businesses. So UK continues to be most pivotal market as an economy of investment, as an economy of trade for enterprises. In fact, Tim very clearly mentioned of it being a second home to the group. Within TCS, UK is the second largest country market for us globally, with close to around 19,000 of our employees living and working in the country. And most importantly, servicing close to around 200 plus enterprises who are very critical to local UK's economy and its presence on the global business map. Whether it is the leading retailers, whether it is the leading bankers, financial services, or the elements related to individual and citizen experience. So we do have the ability of being partnering with some of the leading businesses in their initiatives. I think coming to talent and technology, I think if we just reflect on last 3 months, what it has taught us is the utilization of technology and the reimagination of technology needs to be driven from a very different perspective. The way we look at technology is not necessarily as a mode of bringing a slight efficiency, but essentially we need to reimagine technology as an underlying fabric, which can deliver enhanced experience towards enterprises, towards society, and more largely towards citizens and governments. I think we need to reimagine the utilization of technology from that lens, and the combination of talent and technology, in our opinion, is the fundamental core to the entire philosophy of Be the Revival, and in fact, lead the change. In fact, in last 3 months, we have been able to industrialize the utilization of technology to over 400,000 of our own employees spread globally, who used to co-locate in our offices largely in India as big campuses, to be distributed across their home as work locations, but still be technologically coupled on the back of these investments. I think some of these are eye-opening examples and just narrate the entire relevance and importance of the scale that technology can deliver to all of us as enterprises, as well as individual citizens and contributors to larger economy. Thank you.
That's great, Amit. If I could maybe give the opportunity of bringing Tariq back in to respond to what you've just heard from the High Commissioner and from Amit.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think it's great to see how much agreement there is. I think, you know, we're not sitting down and looking at this, yes, from different perspectives, but the common objective is in front of us. I think you're quite right, Jitesh, to say that it's not just government to government. Government is intrinsically linked with how we work with the private sector. And I think both governments are of that mindset, that we want to leverage the private sector fully for the potential it holds. I'm very ambitious because you and I have often talked about this, that when you look at the strength of the British Indian diaspora business, the private sector arm, whilst there are some great names and we've already heard from some of them, the potential is huge to really leverage that more fully. And the High Commissioner is spot on. I think in the post-Brexit Britain, you know, we're finalising all our final arrangements. I assure you there's lots going on. In the midst of all of this, of course, we're also merging the Foreign Office with the Department of International Trade. And that, for everyone listening in, we believe very strongly, the Prime Minister is very much leading on the front, is to align the values piece, which also the High Commissioner talked about in the international forum. So whilst we're talking private sector, is how we work together in the multilateral sphere. So these provide huge opportunities. And as we look forward to 2021, from the 1st of January, the United Kingdom would have completed its transition period of leaving the European Union. On the 1st in January, India will be joining the UN Security Council. We then also have the prospect of the rescheduled Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, which will take place in Kigali in Rwanda, and of course COP26, which we've all talked about. Now, all these meetings are relevant, but they're also relevant, and they must have, as they've had during London's Heads of Government meeting, a prosperity priority. And by that I mean our private sector must be playing an integral role in all these different elements of what we're seeking to do. We will not be able to achieve our targets, objectives and ambitions on climate change without the private sector. We will not be able to, obviously, have strengthened trade across different sectors. And we need to move away from perhaps some of the traditional things we've talked about to see new innovation. We haven't touched on the key word of technology. I remember I've made several visits to India as a minister, but my first ministerial visit that I made was when Prime Minister Modi hosted a cyber conference. And I was amazed by the talent of youngsters. There were children, you know, as young as some of mine, who were coming on stage and meeting the Prime Minister's challenge on cyber security. And I think there's a huge potential. Our Prime Minister, Prime Minister Johnson, has talked about the technology partnerships. And when Prime Minister Modi visited London in 2018, this was one of the key priorities we highlighted. So huge potential. The private sector is not separate to, but intrinsic to what we're seeking to achieve. And that, I think it bodes well for, as I said, not just both countries, but globally. And I'm absolutely delighted that we'll be working with India in a multilateral fora as well.
Sadly, we are almost out of time. So in the last few minutes, literally a couple of minutes, maybe I can be a little bit cheeky and ask each of you, by the time we host the 3rd annual India Day in Parliament next year, what one thing do you hope we will have achieved in the next 12 months to look back upon when we hopefully meet in person rather than virtually this time next year? Maybe starting with the High Commissioner. I think you'll have to go. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm sorry about that. I think the most urgent wish of mine is the vaccine project between Oxford and the Serum Institute. So like everybody in the world, our eyes are on that. I also think that climate change is the other big thing. We should listen very carefully to what the experts are telling us, rather than have another, global crisis like we've just had, the pandemic. So not to take too much time, but these two would be the things that I would like to see India and the UK work on and take the lead, and we can, and we must.
Well, look, vaccines and climate would definitely be sort of high up on my list too. Next, if I can ask Amit.
Sure. I think the only single point in my mind towards this is to be able to come together and lead the change. The world has opened up not only for challenges, but also for opportunities. And I think this is a brilliant moment for us to lead that together.
Fantastic. And finally, Tariq.
Yeah, I agree with the High Commissioner. We're great to coming together to find a vaccine on COVID. So COVID, climate, but can only be delivered through collaboration and collective action. High Commissioner, you quoted Mahatma Gandhi ji. He also said the future depends on what we do today and what you do today, what we collectively do. And if I may, it really sums it up really neatly that our actions today will determine our successes for tomorrow. If I could just indulge you, and finally, as the British Minister, say to all people, we're proud to be hosting this. I pay tribute to my good friend, Lord Gadia, for his initiative. He, I know, expends a great deal of time and energy in bringing us all together, as he's done today virtually. So I hope, God willing, as a Muslim, I always say, Inshallah, we will meet in person. And I end, if I may, in words of Hindi, कि हमारी प्रार्थना है कि अगले वर्ष हम आप सबका स्वागत लंदन में करेंगे. Namaste.
That's fantastic, Tariq, and a brilliant set of contributions. Thank you to my colleague Lord Tariq Ahmed, Her Excellency Gayatri Kumar, and Amit Kapoor. Thank you for joining India Global Week 2020.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Stay safe. Thank you.